So a couple weeks ago, I talked to you about oil painting, and I wanted to go back and revisit this topic because I feel like there's a little bit of resistance or fear of oil paint for some people. I know I was that way initially when I started. It was a very long time. I think I was probably in my 30s by the time I ever actually picked up some oil because I was so intimidated by mediums and all those things. And I know some people have voiced their opinion saying that they don't have the space because they're worried about the smells and that sort of thing. So I want to give you a solution to where you can at least test it or try it, because I feel like every artist should at least feel what it feels like to paint in oils at some point in their life, even if they feel like they can't do it or that it's so intimidating. Trust me, I think there's ways to learn about it to where you can start loving it. And one of the reasons why I do feel like every artist should try painting in oils at least once is because it feels like you're painting with butter. There's just no other comparison to painting with oils. Acrylics, they just don't, there's no similarity. I don't really think I know of anything else that feels quite the way that oils do. And obviously, throughout the generations, throughout the years of humanity, all the great masters, obviously so many people have gravitated towards oils, and I think that there's a reason why, is because how it feels and how it reacts and the results that you get with it. But because we've often been intimidated by people sharing so much information and all these different techniques that make things look so complicated, it's daunting, and I get that. I truly do. But going back to one person who especially mentioned the fact that they were in an apartment and they didn't feel like that they had the space to safely paint in oils, I just want to show you that you can. You might have to paint small, and you can keep things very minimal. And that's what I'm going to be demonstrating today. And I'm also just going to be showing you how you could get started in oils, because when I was doing my quick demo the other day, it was kind of like in the middle of a painting and just starting to get familiar with the actual mixing of paints and showing you some of the materials that I use. So just quickly and in review, these, and you probably, if you've been here a hot minute, these are probably some paintings you've seen before. But this painting has long since dried, and it's even been actually varnished. And the same thing is true with this one, which I've shown before if you've been here for a hot minute. And but these are some things that you probably haven't seen. This was an eye study that I did a while back. It's on a gray ground, so this is a gray gesso. And then I used a photograph that I had of my model and painted her eye. So, but I didn't really like the results because even though I feel like the draftsmanship's okay, it seemed very cold, and I feel like this gray gesso kind of created that for me. But regardless, and because today is actually Easter, this was something I painted last Easter. I had dyed some eggs, and I just thought, well, let me put them on a paper bag. And so I crumpled up a paper bag and I placed them on them, and I thought I would do a study. Well, this study took me longer than I thought it was going to because of that paper bag. Paper bags are fun and they're challenging, but it was a lot of work. But I'll show you what I missed painting on here are these hardboard panels by Jack Richardson. And I think I got this off of Blick. And they're really inexpensive if you're just wanting to play. I don't know, like long term, how great they would be, but I have several of them just for playing, and I just actually just gessoed them and then painted on top of the panel itself. I also have some so I can attach some linen to it, so I have more of these. These are some old duds that I have, but I have not thrown them out because I like the results. Someone had actually lent me a beautiful bowl, silver bowl that they had, and she had gardenias in her garden, and so I I started painting it. Well, it also took a long time. Anytime you're doing reflective surfaces can be really quite challenging, but it was fun, and I feel like I was getting kind of parts of the gardenia down, but then I felt guilty. I felt like I had to return her bowl, but it was such a cool bowl. I loved it. Then I have some crazy little things, experimental things that I did, like I had taken this picture of this cow. I actually took the photograph, but I was so interested in his eye. And so that was something else I played with. These are just duds where I got started and I'm like, well, that's more than I really want to invest in. But this is what that ground actually looks like. It's basically just like white gesso, except for it's gray. It's also, I believe this is also made by Liquitex, and I just got it so that I could play with it. But this was just something I had gotten, and I kind of like it sometimes. This was another thing that I had done a while back, but it's actually still kind of wet because I've been playing with it a little bit. This was back when I was still coloring my hair pre-COVID, and I really like the eye, but then and that's all I was doing. I was just trying to do an eye study. So this was me, a self-portrait, and I just got a mirror and I was focusing on doing my eye. Let's see if you can see that eye very well. And my eyes are brown, but there's a hint of green in there. So that's what I was just trying to accomplish, was a really good realistic eye, and using myself as a model. But I started expanding it later on, and then I hated it. So I've since gone back and just took it back to where it was just the gray background like I had it initially, because that's what I loved the most about it. I think if I want to do a full self-portrait, I'm going to have to plan it out and probably do a pre-drawing before I go there. But you don't always have to paint on some type of fancy surface. You can just buy this cheap canvas paper, and this is one by Strathmore, and here's the paper palette. So you don't, even if you don't have any type of palette, glass palette or anything that you're comfortable with mixing, these are almost like, I don't know, wax type sheets that you can mix your colors on. And so if you want to give it a try, this is something that you can do. I will show you. So this is actually a radish still life that I did on some canvas paper. Now the only thing I don't like about canvas paper is the texture. And if you don't like it either, and that's actually why I like panels that are either flat, or I will get very, very fine linen and paint on it. If I'm painting really thick and I don't care, or if I'm doing something abstract, I can get the cheaper stuff. But the cheaper cotton canvas that you might see in Michael's is not good quality canvas. You know, it could be Michael's or any of the craft stores are not going to carry good linen, because it's expensive. And that, unfortunately, that cotton will rot over time. It will decay, where linen has the longevity that it needs to be for a painting that maybe your family will keep and cherish over time. But I think that overall, just for testing and for trying, especially if you're not used to doing oils, is this canvas paper, it worked pretty good, I think. I think my results were fairly decent. So that's what I'm going to do today, but I'm going to show you, even if you do just live in a very small place, or if you're worried about fumes, and if you're not used to working in oils, you can really pin it down to a very small space and using a very small amount of stuff. And especially if you're not used to oils and you've never been around them before, and you have a slight fear of them, just work very, very small and use only just a small select set of paints. And you can do that easily by doing something in monotone. And I actually did not need as many colors as I have on my little palette here, but I decided to choose to do them. But this is like a raw umber, a burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and just your regular old yellow, primary yellow. But I got these out and I thought, well, let me just show you how to do something really small. And so I had a cup of tea. Here's my cup of tea. I got this fancy cup in North Carolina with my family. Some amazing Japanese potter is there, and anyways, I can't really show you the cup at this angle, but so I had some tea, and I have a bag of tea that I had gotten from Korea, and I put it in here, and I thought, well, let me see if we can just do something really simple. And I'm going to show you not only how you paint, and I'm probably not going to go in great detail here, but I'm going to show you how to get started and how to do an initial drawing. You don't even have to go super far. You can just do the drawing, and we'll get started with just that. You know, just getting started and seeing what your results are and how to play with just a few materials. So if you have never bought anything, I would say get yourself some Gamsol. That's what this is, Gamsol. You can get a very small bottle of Gamsol. Just look on Amazon. And that is 100% pure odorless mineral spirits. So it's the standard for studio safety. And I have not had any reaction to this. I can't smell it at all. But if you're worried about that, you can use a very small cup. You don't have to have a big, huge oil paint, mineral spirits type of container. You can do something. These are little containers that you can buy. They're technically for going out in the field. They have screw-on tops. So you can just pour a little bit in there, and that's all we'll need for this little experiment. And that way, you know, you're just testing. You don't have to fill it up. Just put a little bit in there just to see. So that way you can be around it, smell it, and have it in your area. And so the reason why it has a clip is it's meant to be like clipped onto a board. So if you have a drawing board, you could clip it on there even. And you could just tape, if you buy some of this canvas paper, you can just tie it down to that. But I'm just going to use it like that. And I have my own tiny little palette that I'm going to use. I'm not going to use the palette paper. Just because. But what I am going to use is this cheap canvas paper to just get started. So even if you were going to do this, you could just get, oh, I'd actually need to add some white to this. So this is my Permalba white oil color, white oil paint, which I like. I usually get a big thing of white, but you don't need. You could just get a small tube of white and a little bit of burnt umber, raw umber and burnt umber, something like that, just a small section, and just stick with monotone painting for a while before you ever try to move on. So typically I would probably tape this down, but because I'm just doing a little test, I'm just going to let it sit here, and I'm not using any mediums or anything. I'm just using paint, a brush. I have a little palette knife to mix with, and I have a little bit of Gamsol. And if you're worried about that Gamsol, you can keep it covered up, or you can pour even less on it than you already have. So I think I'm just going to paint this like straight on. And my window's open, so the light might slightly fluctuate. Try to kind of move everything around to where it's kind of straight for you. So this isn't going to be fancy. It's not going to be highly detailed. It's just going to be how you get started, doing something super simple, just to get past our fears. And if you are feeling anxious about oil paints, I would say get yourself a pad of this and do it a lot, just to get past it, just to get past it, and to start to feel more comfortable with how it feels. Because it is actually quite enjoyable. So even though I just dipped my brush in there, I just want to go ahead and pre-mix a couple of things. Turn my thing around here, got it in the wrong direction. I'm just going to mix up here. like I said, you can make yours completely monotone. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It does not have to be or look anything like mine. Right now I'm just mixing colors because what I'm trying to do is get it to that slightly warmish color. Even though I don't need to match that, we could do this completely in just black and white, or in your raw umber and white, or blue, raw umber and white. Something like that would be very monotone type results. But I'm slightly going to just try to push myself to get maybe a little bit closer to that color without too much work. And you just mix it like that. It feels like soft butter. Let's see. Hopefully it's doing okay. I'm never sure about this thing really working well as far as its focus. I haven't got all my I don't know, skills just where they should be. All right, another thing I know I want, and I already know I'm gonna have to get some more colors out. But you could be very slow, go very, very slow, take very small amounts of paint out if you're concerned. All right, right this second, let's see, the only thing else I think I might need is some more white and more raw umber and another paper towel. So one of the paper towels that I use, especially when it comes to working in oils, is Viva, because Viva it's very thick and it's more expensive, but it's a really good sturdy towel. So that's just a personal favorite, a personal thing. Let me see, and I was gonna get some white, more white. I don't need too much. You can be very, very cautious about what you're putting out. This is my little palette of popular stuff here. Here's some raw umber. Just put it over to the side here. Get a little bit more of that. And if you did watch the painting video that I did, the painting people video, you will remember, not in the one where I did the roses, but the one where I was just painting using gouache. I actually drew with my paint initially, and that's often what I do, especially when I get started, with a painting. I'm just trying to, I want to be able to get down where I want everything to be. But you might have to let stuff dry if you do that, especially on a large painting. And so if you're concerned about that, so if you really water down your paint and you make it a little watery, now you cannot use too much Gamsol with your paint later on in your layers. But when you first get started, you're just trying to draw. We can add a little bit, I'm adding in a little bit of ultramarine blue to make it slightly darker. You can make it slightly watery, and that way after you draw in your image, you can let it dry. It will dry fairly quick because of the Gamsol, and then you can move forward. But I don't know if we're going to do all that today. All right, this is not going to be like a super accurate painting. It's just going to be a shot at it. I'm not even going to measure anything. This is all just going to be like eyeballed. And if you happen to have seen the video that I did on drawing trees, and when I talked about drawing in straight lines, I'm also slightly altered here because typically when I paint in oils, I virtually never paint flat. And I could put this all up on a canvas, but I wanted you to see all the the very basic materials that I had here for complete honesty. And let's see, I'm just gonna fake this little string here. It looks nothing like that, but let's see, it comes down here. Let's see, this to this. I know I'm going to be just kind of winging this because part of it's going to be from my imagination because I'm just doing a quick demo. It's not some amazing still life thing that I'm working on here. This is just for you. I don't think anybody would want this. It's just a little test. So you see how easily I drew, just using a little bit of the Gamsol and a little bit of color, and it was really, and I think it works really well. And then you can work out your parts, and if you don't like something, you can easily wipe it out. You can easily wipe it out. You can usually you get a little bit of Gamsol on your rag. So let's just do a little bit because I really don't technically want to undo anything. I just want to show you what you can do. So you would have stereotypically, especially if you're doing something larger, you would have gloves on, or at least one glove on that you're doing your work with. But again, quick demo today, nothing fancy here. But you can wipe your drawing back. It's dyed the paper slightly, this cheap material, but that's how you push things back if you didn't like your drawing, and then you start over, and that Gamsol would dry right up. But we still want to be dedicated to our efforts here today. And let's see, what I see is that there is a seam down the middle of the bag. And then, let's see, aside from my tag here, there's a little shadow back here. It's not that dark, but sorry for the shadows. All right, and then my T, see, comes like right about here, goes down. In that bag. Then I want to use some of this up here, I think. Yep, that's the color that I want, or it's very close if it's not exactly right on. So let's actually graduate up to a slightly larger brush. So this is actually one of the Treacle brushes, a Crimson Takalon number 6. It's a very fine pointed brush. It's a little bit more expensive. You don't have to buy a fancy brush, but I have a couple at this point. So this is the same brand. It is a number 4, and it's a filbert. And just because I want to get the colors in, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get a start going. Now, if you just do this, I mean, it's fine if you're just playing and you are trying to get more comfortable with painting in oil, to leave things as they are. But you just need to know that over time it will scratch off easily because the layers are really not built up. It's not really an oil painting. We're almost doing it like a watercolor right now, just to get a beginning going. And I'm just using this a little bit. I'm using this to clean my brush as well as help as a basic medium. That's what Gamsol actually kind of is used as. It's a cleaner to clean up your dirt. Like I would use Gamsol to clean my palette when I get done. Now if you have a throwaway palette, just put it in a bag and throw it away. You might want to throw it in the refrigerator for a little bit. If your garbage isn't going out, if you live in an apartment or a small space and you're worried about it, you can just put it in a little garbage bag and throw it in your freezer until it's garbage day and take it out then. I don't do that. I usually just have a little bag and I throw it in my garbage can because I can't smell anything. It really does not smell unless you start painting a lot. Then you start smelling the oil paints as it dries or it's on a large surface. So another thing I want to do, and typically, like I said, I would have this thing up on an easel and it wouldn't be so movable. But I want to get a little bit of that pretty blue on that tag, which is actually one of my favorite colors. And so I added in a little bit of ultramarine, and you're like, how do you get to that color? Any guesses? Let me pick this up so you can see it better. It does feel really nice when you mix paint, especially if you get more paint. You want to add just a touch of yellow. Let's see if I got this right or if I'm too far off still. Yep, I'm a little bit. And if I really wanted it to be super accurate, I might have to play with this a while and maybe have other paints to get it right to where I wanted it. The right levels of blues and greens and whites and yellow. See, now it's in the yellow range. This is really the only reason why this blue is on this palette, is to see if I could mix this color. Now I'm struggling with it. It needs more white. Now we're in the green range. Okay, the struggle is real. Definitely too much yellow in there now. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it right spot on with what I've got here, but it'll be good enough. It's not exactly where I want it, but it's not too far from it. It's kind of in the sage green range right now. And like if you wanted to keep, like let's say you like this color, you could just plop some down and then keep manipulating what you had into a different range. So that's all I'm going to do for that, because it's not a priority for me right now. But if it was, I would probably get out some other paints to make it get more spot on like I liked it. All right. Cleaning my brush a little bit with just that little bit of Gamsol. Yes, it does get dirty, but if you're doing for something small, I mean, and typically for me, probably I would have a little bit more Gamsol in here, but I wanted to share with you how little you could go and how far you could go with your little painting here. Actually, the top part of it is actually white. Like I said, I'm not getting in too much into the weeds here on this. Right now we're just trying to get some color down. As long as you're working mostly monotone, that little bit of Gamsol being dirty won't really matter that much. All right, let's upgrade to the larger brush so I can get in some more, just some color. Again, I'm just getting in my initial colors so I can start to see what I'm working with here. I didn't really have to get into doing a background, but I lost my edge, and so that made me commit to it. But you don't have to. You don't. If you're going to do this, if you're going to play with this exercise, if you're going to give this a try after seeing this video, you don't have to do, well, you don't have to do anything. You could just do this and just get this far, or you could just do a drawing. Just do several drawings and just feel what that paint feels like. See how long it takes for you to let the paint dry. All those sorts of things. Go back and paint on it after it is dry if you want, or you could do the wet on wet approach where you're just painting while it's still wet, and it takes a little bit more control and manipulation to do wet on wet because well, actually both have their positives and their negatives, because once something dries, sometimes it's difficult to get to the colors that you want. But if you're doing something more like, say, let's say the Impressionists, you don't have to do all that. I mean, I think right now even this little tea bag looks pretty good. I mean, that's not looking too bad. And if that's all you want to do, just like, let's just do something really simple, and then just put it aside. Your little painting does not have to be a masterpiece. It's really just like those first attempts when you first picked up a pencil. That's all it is. And you don't have to follow anybody else's desire for an outcome other than what you want to do. So So I've put in a little bit of a background just because, and I couldn't stop myself. And this is the problem with me, is I often cannot stop myself in doing a lot of these sorts of things. My water's getting, or my gamsol's getting very dirty, so I know I'm coming to the end here of my efforts. But it's fine for what we're doing. But I want to get in some of the real colors here. Right now everything's a bit of a wash. So now, I mean, a little bit that gamsol has dried. Now it's not completely dried, I will say that. But now you need to be using very little gamsol, and you need to be straight into the paint, because especially a paint that's good. Now I think if you saw my video where I was talking about the materials, you have to be careful, because the reason why paints matter in oil is because cheap paints don't have great materials in them. Whereas something like at least getting that Winsor & Newton professional oil paint or artist oil paint that I use, you will get a better quality of a product that's a binder in there, and it will work right, and it will show up for you correctly, as it should. And you may not think that that is important if you're just getting started, but it is, because the results are so different that a bad experience with oil will make you not want to pick it up again. So that's why I suggest, just using a very limited amount of materials. To begin with. And just doing some sketching, and you have to learn to feel how it's supposed to feel. It takes a little time, but if you're following these steps I'm giving you, where, like I said, you can use a gamsol for initial wash to get an idea of where you're going, and then you start actually, once the gamsol and your watercolory type of a mixture has dried, that's when you come back and you can start really laying down. Right now it's all wet on wet right now as for this demo, but that's fine. I'm just laying on some color here. The only thing is that you sometimes have to fight it to get it back exactly the way you want it, and that's pretty much what oil paint is like. It is a slight going back and forth, a dueling of trying to get things the way you want it. Sometimes that initial wash, it's hard. It's like you're like, oh my gosh, I love this initial wash, I don't want to touch it. It's not going to stick onto your painting for very long. If you scratch it, it's gonna fall right off. So that's something you have to get past. And I could really get down into the weeds of this and be here for a very long time, but I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick, I hope. Another thing you have to worry about is make sure that you watch how much white oil paint you use. That is a beginner's mistake. Even a seasoned person can get there. As I can see myself, I'm already starting to use too much white because I'm trying to get what I want as a result here quickly. Put in some of this random pieces of tea leaves that are in this painting that I'm seeing. And then let's see here. What do I want? I'll mix in a little bit of the raw and the burnt umber to get some of this warmth that I'm seeing in here. And like I said, you're eventually going to have to cover everything up. Everything that initial wash cannot be your painting. You have to, it's just a guide really, that initial wash. Now I know that there's tons of videos out there, but I wanted to give you a very simple way. I don't want you to feel intimidated like I did. I hate the fact that even though in college and stuff, even in college, I never had anybody who could really teach me how to paint in oil. Now this was in my day. This was pre-internet when I was in college. Well, we had basic stuff, but nothing super informative. Like here on YouTube, well, you could learn anything. You could learn how to change the engine in your car if you were so motivated. I need to reestablish this brush is not fine enough for what I kind of want to do here. Let's see, there is a that tea is kind of a mixture between the raw umber and the burnt umber. It's dark, but it's slightly warm. So I'm having to mix the two to kind of get what I want. The tip of this brush is not really fine enough to get the action that I want to get here with all of this. But I think it'll be good enough for you to just see and understand how I get started. Now granted, if I was really painting this and this was going to be like I was going to take this all the way to a more finished product, not that I don't love it, and maybe it will get close to being almost done, but you can choose to leave it loose and more impressionistic, or do it where it's at a high level. But if you want to take something to a high level, well, you're going to have to spend a lot more time on it, and that's not really like my heart's desire anymore. I do it occasionally, but my boredom level, it's just not my heart and soul anymore to do something. It was a good challenge on the times that I've done it. I'm getting to where it's actually very close to being like I've covered up all my initial drawing. Like I told you, you got to make sure that all that Gamsol watery initial color deposit for the own purpose of you just being able to visualize what you're doing, and you don't have to do that. You could go straight in with more paint. My neighbor's dog is now starting to bark. They must have gone off and left it. He's actually not my neighbor's dog. He's my neighbor's son's dog, who occasionally stays there. See, like this is almost my shadow is actually too warm, but I don't want to get out any blacks or anything or I don't want to really pre-mix it because I'm almost really done with as far as I plan on taking this today. When my neighbor's dog used to live there, he would sometimes escape and be wandering down the road like and he's like this little tiny dachshund. Okay, what do y'all think? I mean, you could take it even further where you put writing on it. I mean, we're talking about something a lot more detailed, but I don't know, it feels not too bad for a quick little painting on cheap paper. So, I hope that made you feel slightly better about the process of painting. Even if you just get a couple of paints, like I said, and you just play with making drawings in oils and then letting them dry and then maybe doing the wash. You could work it up to the various levels until you get to an actual full-on painting. It could be just a very small painting. You could do a tea bag. You could do something really small. You could do a handkerchief. You could do a leaf. You could do lots of really simple things. Or you could do like what I did and do a radish from the grocery store or something that maybe you have in your refrigerator. So there's a few options. The good thing about the tea bag is that until it dries, it's gonna look this way for a bit and you could easily re-wet it and you got yourself back to your model that you were initially using. So now the only thing that we have left to do is to do a cleanup. Now a couple of things. So the benefits of using the palette paper is, let's say you don't want to waste all this nice paint. You could actually put it on the palette paper, or if you use palette paper, you just fold it up and you could put it in some type of a plastic container and put it in your fridge and it will stay wet for a while. You could use it all week long and that way you're not wasting any of this precious paint, because I know it's not very cheap. But there are options for you to get things put away when you're doing something on the fly, something quick and easy, just getting started painting in oil. So now all I want to do is I'm going to clean up my brushes finally. And yes, I will be using the dirty Gamsol, but then what I will do, and you make sure, here's something that's very, very important. If you have something bigger than a cup like this, don't ever put your brushes down into the cup and let it sit there. No. Never, because you're going to mess up your precious brushes so easily. You want to get them flat as quickly as possible. So when you clean them, you will clean them in Gamsol. And here we'll do this really quickly. Clean them in Gamsol, and yes, you might want to have some cleaner Gamsol at that point. But as long as you follow the next step, like this is fairly clean. There's no goopy amount of paint in there. There's just a little bit in there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my room where I normally clean up my brushes. I have an extra bathroom and I have a little container of Dove soap and a little container like this. And you could put the Dove soap in there and you just wash the bristles in there. And you use a lot of the soap. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big gobbing, but it has to be like on the actual bristles. And get all that paint out. You do it a few times. Rinse. Do it again until it's completely clean. But after you get done with washing them, you want to get yourself a nice clean towel and put them someplace safe and lay them down to dry. Make sure all your bristles are nice and straight. And you can even leave a little bit of soap on there if you want to help if you feel like anything's out of place, to get reestablish a good tip, and lay it down. And then when you bring it back, you can just wash it before you take it back to your studio area or you use it again. So that's one thing when it comes to actually cleaning the brushes. And then another thing that I do, aside from, like I said, you can take some of these paints and put it on the palette paper and put it in the fridge. You can actually even use wax paper. If you don't have palette paper and you have some oils, you can use wax paper. Just fold it up, put it in the fridge, and then whatever mess you have here, you can use the old Gamsol that you just had been painting with to clean up your palette. Now eventually this beautiful palette, which really I have not used that many times, this is a palette that was custom made for me. It's like a little, I have two, well no, I have three. I have three wooden palettes because I was coveting them. This one is perfect for doing small little things, or if you're doing a small area with details. It's just a small surface to do tiny bits of paint, but it will eventually change to a more beautiful gray because it's, I think it's walnut. So I got this from the Traditional Palette Company in Salem, Oregon. I'm not sure if the company's still open, but he used to make palettes, or maybe he still does. But that's where I got this palette. But it's a beautiful color right now. But once with use over time, this whole surface will become a beautiful patina type of gray. And but that's fine. That's what we have, beautiful things so that we can use them, not hoard them. All right. So I'm going to go and clean my messy palette up, put things away, clean my brushes, get everything tidy and put away. If you do have one of these cups, by the way, are so cheap. I think this was like $7 off of Amazon. Super, super cheap. Well, I feel it's super cheap. Put your lid back on if you want to save that Gamsol. But if you're just playing with drawing, or if you're just doing something in monochromatic colors, you can use your dirty Gamsol for a bit until it's gone, or until you use it all up. Just cleaning up your space and tidying up. So, with that said, this is how far we got today with this small little study in oil. I hope this video has made you feel a little bit more comfortable about painting oil if you have been at all reserved or afraid or timid, all those things that will hinder you from actually ever having experience in oil and seeing what beautiful results you can have, the results of the great masters. And I would really highly encourage you to at least have this experience. I think you can do it fairly cheaply with a very few resources. And yes, I do believe you can do something this small and get comfortable with it, even if you're just in an apartment. So, I guess I will leave this week's video right here. And I hope you got something helpful. I hope it encouraged you. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment, or at least an emoji, so I know that you watched all the way to this point. And I really appreciate all your encouragement. And all those things help me to continue to be here and encourages me to make content for each and every one of you. All right, guys, have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.